Chapter 1. The Arrest. The call came in as a 1010, suspicious activity, possible altercation, Grady's Tavern on Elm. Estella Marsh had been a patrol officer for 11 days. This was her first solo call, and she was going to handle it by the book, calmly and without falling over anything. She fell over the curb, getting out of the cruiser. The man was standing outside the tavern, leaning against the brick wall with his arms crossed, watching 5 other men walk away from him very quickly and very quietly. He was tall, significantly tall, the kind of tall that had its own weather system, and he was wearing a charcoal wool coat that cost more than her monthly rent, and an expression of mild interest, as though the evening had been entertaining but not quite enough. "Sir," Estella said, straightening her jacket, "we received a report of a disturbance." He looked at her. Brown eyes, dark hair, a face that was structured in a way she would later describe in her report as composed, because devastating was not a field in the form. He was calm in the specific way that calm people are when they know exactly what they're capable of and have decided not to do it. "There was a brief disagreement," he said. His voice was warm, unhurried, the verbal equivalent of the coat, expensive, fitted, concealing whatever was underneath. "It's been resolved." "Resolved how?" "Conversationally." She looked at the 5 men. They were already at the end of the block, walking with the focused determination of people who had somewhere else to be. None of them looked back. "Have you been drinking, sir?" "1 scotch, 3 hours ago." "Can I see some identification?" "Of course." He reached into his coat, slowly, hands visible, the way people do when they've been asked this before, or when they understand that the woman asking has a radio and a badge, and the weight of her entire 11-day career pressing on her to get this right. He handed her his license. Emmerich Wolfstead. The address was local, barely, an area she associated with old money and long driveways. The photo looked like him, which was unusual, because most license photos looked like the person had been recently excavated. She ran the name. Clean. No warrants, no priors. The system returned the basics and nothing else, the kind of sparse record that either meant a very quiet life or a very careful one. The 5 men were gone. No complainant on scene, no visible injuries, no property damage. Technically, there was nothing to arrest him for, and Estella knew that, and she was about to tell him to have a good evening when she saw what was in his hand. A knife. Small, folding, legal, but open, blade catching the streetlight, held loosely at his side like he'd forgotten it was there. He'd been using it, she realized. Not on anyone, there was no blood. He'd been peeling an apple. There was half an apple in his other hand, but the knife was open. On a public sidewalk, after a reported disturbance. "Sir, I'm going to need you to put the knife down." He looked at the knife, he looked at the apple. He looked at her with an expression of mild surprise that settled, very quickly, into something she couldn't quite read. "Of course," he said. He set the knife on the brick ledge beside him. He took a bite of the apple. He waited. "I'm going to need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back." "May I finish the apple?" "No." "That seems fair." He set the apple next to the knife. He turned around. He placed his hands behind his back with the fluid, unhurried grace of a man who had never in his life been told what to do and had decided, for reasons she could not fathom, to comply with every word out of her mouth. She cuffed him. Her hands were steady. His wrists were warm, warmer than they should have been on a cold night. Warm the way a furnace is warm through a wall. She pulled the cuffs snug and felt him hold perfectly still, not resisting, not complying under protest, just present. Allowing it. The way you allow something you could stop at any moment and are choosing not to. "You have the right to remain silent," she said. "I'd rather not." "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." "I understand." "You have the right to an attorney." "I appreciate the thoroughness." Deep in the architecture of Emmerich Wolfstead's mind, In the place where instinct and identity were not two things but one, something shifted. "Oh," said the part of him that tracked territory and threat and mate with the same flat certainty that it tracked the sun. "Oh, her. She came to us in armor. She carries authority. She smells like rain on warm stone, and she is not afraid of us." "She has put us in restraints," Cade continued, with the deep, radiant certainty of a wolf who has just witnessed something sacred. "In restraints, in front of witnesses. Emmerich, do you understand what has just happened? This is a binding. She has bound us, with metal, in the public square. This is a ceremony. She is performing a ceremony." I was not prepared. I don't have remarks. I should have prepared remarks. Emmerich closed his eyes briefly. The ride to the precinct took 11 minutes. Estella drove. Emmerich sat in the back, handcuffed, watching the city slide past the window. He looked, she thought, like someone who'd just received a gift he hadn't expected and was deciding where to put it. "She is transporting us," Cade reported, from somewhere behind Emmerich's ribs. "To her den. We are being taken to the den. Emmerich, this is nesting behavior. She is bringing us home." "I need a moment. I need several moments. All of them. I need all the moments." At the precinct, she walked him through processing, fingerprints first. The system took his prints. She watched the scan run, the progress bar crawling across the screen, and then, no match found. She ran it again. No match found. She looked at the screen. She looked at his license sitting on the desk. Valid, current, photo matching the man sitting in the booking chair. The system had his name, his address, his date of birth. It did not have his fingerprints. Anywhere. In any database. That was not possible. Every valid state license required prints on file. The database talked to federal systems. A man with a current license and no matching prints was a contradiction. Either the license was forged, or the system had failed in a way she'd never heard of. "Problem?" Emmerich asked, from the booking chair, where he was sitting with his uncuffed hands folded in his lap like a man waiting for a table at a restaurant he liked. "Your fingerprints aren't in the system." "Ah." "What does ah mean?" "It means I'm not surprised, which I understand is not the same as an explanation." She stared at him. He looked back at her, patient, slightly amused, entirely unbothered by the fact that he was the most complicated thing in any room and had long since stopped apologizing for it. Her training officer, Sergeant Briggs, appeared at her shoulder 20 minutes later, read the screen, read the booking sheet, read the man in the chair. "Wolfstead," he said. "That's a name." "Yes, sir." "Prints came back empty?" "Twice." Briggs looked at Emmerich. Emmerich looked back. Authority was not new to him. He wore it like a second coat. "Run it again in the morning," Briggs said. "Could be a system glitch. If it comes back empty a third time, open a case file." He paused. "The knife was legal?" "Folding blade, under 4 inches. "Then we don't have much to hold him on. Public nuisance at best. Process the citation and cut him loose." She processed the citation. She cut him loose. Emmerich Wolfstead stood, buttoned his coat, and said, "Thank you, Officer Marsh," in a voice that contained no irony, no resentment, and no indication that he had just spent 2 hours being booked for eating an apple in public. At the door, he paused. "I'll be available," he said, "if you need to follow up." "We will be available," Cade agreed, vibrating with the contained ecstasy of a wolf whose entire worldview had just been confirmed. "We will be available whenever she summons us. For additional ceremonies. Emmerich, I want to be arrested again. Can we arrange this? Is there a schedule?" He left. The precinct settled back to normal. Estella Marsh sat at her desk and looked at the screen that said, "No match found," and felt for the first time in her 11-day career the particular unease of a fact that didn't fit. In the morning, she ran the prints again. No match found. She opened a case file. Chapter 2. The Case File. Case number 2847-M. Wolfstead, Emmerich. Anomalous Records. Assigned, Officer Marsh. Estella Marsh had always been good at two things: following procedures and noticing when something didn't add up. The second skill made her a good cop. The first made her a thorough one. The combination was about to make her a problem. She started with the license. Valid. Issued 3 years ago. Before that, nothing. No prior license, no learner's permit, no state ID. Emmerich Wolfstead, as far as the system was concerned, had materialized fully formed at age 31 with a valid driver's license and a mailing address. Social Security number. Active. Clean. Filed taxes for 3 years. Employment. Administrator. Of what, the records did not say. No social media. No LinkedIn. No digital footprint of any kind. In an era where everyone existed online, Emmerich Wolfstead existed on paper and nowhere else. She pulled the property records. Wolfstead Holdings, LLC, registered 3 years ago, same window as the license. 14 properties across the city. She plotted them on a map, sticking pins in a corkboard the way Briggs had taught her, and stepped back. The pins formed a rough circle. Not perfect, organic, following the shape of the city's geography, clustering around parks and green corridors and the river, but unmistakably a perimeter. The kind of shape that meant territory if you were the kind of person who thought in those terms. Estella was not that kind of person. She was the kind of person who noticed the shape and wrote it down, and didn't assign meaning until the evidence told her to. She requested a formal interview. Emmerich Wolfstead arrived at the precinct at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, wearing a navy coat this time, holding a paper cup of coffee, radiating the specific calm of someone who'd been invited onto foreign soil and found the locals delightful. "She has summoned us," Cade said, with a reverence that bordered on religious. "To her territory, in writing. Emmerich, this is formal courtship. She has initiated official proceedings. There are documents. I have never been happier. I didn't know this quantity of happiness was available. I would like to file a complaint about not being informed sooner." "Mr. Wolfstead, thank you for coming in." "Of course." He sat in the chair across from her desk, the same chair where suspects sat, witnesses sat, people who had done things and been caught sat, and he sat in it like it was a throne that happened to have vinyl upholstery. "How can I help?" She opened her notebook. She had prepared 12 questions. She was going to ask them in order and write down the answers, and not notice the way he tracked every movement in the room without turning his head. "What do you do for a living?" "I manage a community." "What kind of community?" "A large one." "How large?" "Several thousand." She wrote that down. "And Wolfstead Holdings, what does that entity do?" "It holds property for members of the community." "Which community?" "The one I manage." She put her pen down. "Mr. Wolfstead, you are answering every question I ask, and none of your answers are telling me anything." Something happened in his face. Not a smile, smaller than that, deeper, the ghost of a reaction he'd caught and held before it landed. "That's a very precise observation." "I'm a very precise person." "I've noticed." She held his gaze. His eyes were brown and steady, and she noticed this now in the fluorescent lighting of the precinct in a way she hadn't outside Grady's. Very still. Not the stillness of someone being careful, the stillness of something that was, by its nature, very still. The way a predator is still. The way a large animal holds itself when it is watching something small and choosing not to move. She wrote "stillness," unusual, in her notebook and continued. Question 7 was about the men from the first arrest, the 5 who had walked away from him outside Grady's. "Did you know them?" "Some of them." How? Through the community. The community you manage? Yes. His voice dropped. Not louder, not sharper, lower. Half an octave, maybe less, the register shifting the way a cello shifts from an A string to a C. It was the voice that ended conversations, and she could feel it in her sternum, a physical thing, a vibration that had nothing to do with volume and everything to do with what was behind it. She wrote, "Voice, register shift, question 7, in her notebook. She did not look up. She was afraid that if she looked up, he would see that her hands had very nearly not been steady. She also noticed, somewhere around question 9, that she could smell pine resin, faintly. Not the cleaning product kind, real pine, the kind you smelled in forests, sharp and cold and alive. It was coming from him, she was sure of it. There was no forest within 12 miles of the precinct, and no candle or air freshener in the interview room, and the man sitting across from her smelled like the inside of a pine stand in January. 17 minutes, 12 questions, 12 answers that were technically truthful and functionally useless. He was the most cooperative, least informative person she had ever interviewed, and the precision of it, the way he navigated truth without ever arriving at disclosure, was more suspicious than any lie would have been. "Thank you for your time," she said. "Any time." He stood. He buttoned his coat. "Officer Marsh." "Mr. Wolfstead." He paused at the door. The same pause as last time. Not hesitation, just a beat, a space left open for something he was choosing not to say. Then he left, and the precinct smelled faintly of pine resin for 10 minutes afterward, and Estella Marsh wrote, "Pine resin, source unknown," in her notebook and underlined it twice. "She asked us 12 questions," Cade said as Emmerich walked to his car. 12. Emmerich. 12 is a significant number. It is the number of months in a year. She is planning. She is planning a future. She is vetting us on a yearly basis. I need to lie down. I cannot lie down because we are walking. I will lie down internally. Thursday night. Estella was on patrol. Her beat ran along the east side, crossing through 2 of the 14 Wolfstead Holdings properties. She had requested this beat. Briggs had given her a look, but signed off. Dispatch. 10:10, altercation in progress, corner of 9th and Harper. She pulled up to find 5 men standing very still on the sidewalk and 1 man standing in the middle of them. The 5 were arranged in a rough semicircle, and they were not moving. Not frozen, not restrained, just stopped. As though something had happened 2 seconds ago that had made continuing inadvisable. Emmerich Wolfstead was standing at the center. His coat was unbuttoned. His hands were at his sides. He had not been touched. There was no mark on him, no dishevelment, nothing out of place, except a slight flush along his jaw, and the fact that 5 adult men were standing around him the way iron filings arrange around a magnet. Oriented, fixed, unable to look away. One of the 5 shifted his weight, not toward Emmerich, toward Estella. A lateral movement, maybe a step, maybe just the thought of one. Emmerich's head turned. His eyes were gold. Not brown with a tint, not catching the streetlight. Gold. Flat, predatory. The iris contracted to a vertical line, and they were fixed on the man who had moved with a focus so absolute and so still that the man stopped shifting and went rigid, and the street got very, very quiet. Then the gold was gone. Brown again. 2 seconds, maybe less. Estella had been looking right at him. She saw it. She didn't write it down, not yet. She filed it in the place behind her ribs where she kept the things she wasn't ready to put into reports. "Mr. Wolfstead," Estella said. He turned. Something in his face shifted when he saw her. Fast, involuntary, there and gone. The managed mode clicking into place over something that had been, for one unguarded second, entirely real. "Officer Marsh." "Again?" I'm afraid so. What happened? He looked at the 5 men. They looked at the ground. One of them was bleeding from a split lip. Another had torn the sleeve of his jacket. None of them spoke. A disagreement, Emmerich said, in the same warm, precise tone he'd used at Grady's. Territorial in nature. It's been resolved. She looked at the men. Anyone want to make a statement? Silence. Absolute, coordinated, practiced silence. The kind of silence that came from a group of people who had all agreed on the same thing without speaking. Anyone injured? The man with the split lip shook his head. We're fine. You're bleeding. I'm fine. Estella looked at Emmerich. He looked back, steady, patient, watching a very smart woman arrive at the edge of something she didn't have a frame for yet. She arrested him. Open blade folding knife, same one as before. He'd been carrying it in his pocket. Same charge, same process. He went quietly. Again. At the precinct, the desk sergeant looked up. Wolfstead? Wolfstead. She has returned for us, Kate announced, with the absolute certainty of a wolf whose faith in the universe had just been spectacularly vindicated. The system works. Emmerich. She came back. We have been recollected. This is, I believe the human term is dating? We are dating. Is this a date? I think this is a date. It is the best date. We are in handcuffs and it is the best date. During the second booking, she pulled his prints again. No match found. She added it to the case file. The 5 men from 9th and Harper were brought in for statements. All 5 gave identical accounts. A minor disagreement, already resolved, no one wished to press charges. They were polite. They were cooperative. They gave their names and addresses and left within 45 minutes, and every single one of them had the same quality in their bearing, the deference. The way they moved around the word Emmerich without saying it, the way they answered her questions while angling their bodies toward the door, the way they watched each other for cues about what could be said. Estella had seen that pattern before, in families, in organizations, in groups of people who answered to someone and knew it. She wrote, deference, consistent across subjects, in her notebook. She was building something. She didn't know what it was yet, but the shape was getting clearer. The perimeter of properties, the men who didn't talk, the fingerprints that didn't exist, the man at the center of it all who answered every question and revealed nothing and went quietly every time she put cuffs on him. She went home. She pinned the property map to her wall above her desk. She stared at the circle of pins and thought about the word territorial, and wrote a note in the margin of her case file. What kind of community has a perimeter? Chapter 3. The Pack House. The noise complaint came in on a Saturday night. 114 Harker Street, one of the 14 Wolfstead Holdings properties. Estella volunteered before anyone else could take it. Briggs raised an eyebrow. That's your case file address. One of them. You sure you want to take a noise complaint on an active case? I want to see what's inside. He signed off. He shouldn't have. He did. She drove to 114 Harker Street with her notebook on the passenger seat and the property map folded in her jacket pocket and the specific, focused alertness of a cop who knew she was walking into something and had decided to walk in anyway. The house was large, 2 stories, set back from the street, warm light in every window. The noise was audible from the sidewalk, not music, not a party. Voices. Many voices, layered and overlapping. The sound of a lot of people in one space being a lot of people. Laughter. A child's shriek. Something that might have been singing. She knocked. The door opened. Cal Firth. She recognized him from the first arrest, the man who'd collected Emmerich from the precinct. Mid-40s, lean, carrying the bone-deep fatigue of someone whose entire career was managing someone else's chaos. He saw her badge first, then her face, and his expression did something complicated. Officer Marsh. We received a noise complaint. He looked at her for a beat longer than necessary. Then he stepped back. Come in. The inside of 114 Harker Street was not what she expected. It was warm, not just temperature warm, warmer than a house with radiators should be, warmer than bodies in a room could explain. The heat had a quality to it, a density, like standing downwind of a bonfire that wasn't there. It was the same heat she'd felt from Emmerich's skin the night she'd cuffed him, that impossible furnace warmth, but multiplied by 30, layered and ambient, as though the house itself was running a fever. The hallway opened into a large living area, and in the living area were, she counted, 32 people. Men, women, children. Some sitting, some standing, some cross-legged on the floor. A teenage girl was reading in the corner. 2 men were playing chess. A woman was braiding a child's hair. 3 older men stood near the kitchen doorway, holding mugs, mid-conversation. And Emmerich Wolfstead was standing by the fireplace. She hadn't seen him at first. He was positioned at the edge of the room, not the center, leaning against the mantelpiece, holding a glass of something dark, listening to a woman tell a story. But the room was organized around him. Not consciously, no one was staring, no one was angled toward him, no one was performing deference. It was subtler than that. The way the currents of the room flowed, the way movement patterns avoided his space, the way conversation rippled outward from his position like water from a dropped stone. He was the center of gravity, and everyone in the room was in orbit, and nobody had decided to orbit. They just did, the way you orient toward the source of warmth without thinking about it. He looked up when she walked in. His face did the same thing it had done on 9th and Harper. The involuntary shift, the real thing before the managed thing covered it. He set down his glass. Officer Marsh. Mr. Wolfstead. 32 people went quiet. Not silent, quiet. The quality of a room that had been full and was now paying attention. We received a noise complaint, she said to the room. I need to verify the situation and file a report. Is the property owner available? I'm the property manager, Cal said from behind her. The property is owned by Wolfstead Holdings. She knew that. She'd known that before she volunteered for the call. She looked at Emmerich. Can I speak with you privately? Can I speak with you privately? Cal took a half step forward. Not aggressively. The movement was lateral. Positioning, the automatic shifting of weight that a person did when they were accustomed to being between someone and a threat. His shoulders squared, his jaw set. His eyes, brown, steady, but with the same quality of too-still watchfulness she'd started cataloging as unusual, went to Estella's hands, then her badge, then her face. She recognized the posture. Close protection. She'd trained on it at the academy. Cal Firth was a bodyguard who didn't know he was being read as one. Emmerich said, "It's fine, Cal," in a voice that was not loud and not sharp, and ended the discussion as completely as a door closing. Cal stepped back. His jaw didn't unset. The porch was cold. November cold. The kind that found the gaps in your jacket and stayed. Estella stood at the railing. Emmerich stood 3 feet away, coatless. He'd left it inside, and the cold didn't seem to reach him in the way it reached other people. That impossible warmth, radiating off him like a low-grade fever that had nothing to do with illness. She didn't start with the noise complaint. Your fingerprints don't exist in any database, she said. Your records start 3 years ago. No prior license, no history, no digital footprint. You own 14 properties in a pattern that traces a perimeter around the east side of the city. She pulled the folded map from her jacket. This pattern. Every property inside this line, every person I've spoken to in connection with your name, they all do the same thing. They defer. They coordinate. They protect. Every person in that room is oriented around you like your magnetic north, and none of them decided to do it. She put the map on the porch railing between them. I've been a cop for 25 days. I have arrested you twice. Both times, you were in the middle of something you could have handled without my involvement. Both times, you went quietly. Both times, the people around you closed ranks and said nothing. She looked at him. I am about to file a report on this case that goes to my sergeant, then to the precinct captain, then to records. It will include the fingerprint anomaly, the property pattern, and the coordinated non-cooperation of multiple witnesses. She paused. Before I file that report, I am giving you the opportunity to tell me what I'm actually looking at. Because I think you know exactly what I've found, and I think you've known since the first night that my finding it was only a matter of time. The porch was quiet. Inside, the muffled sound of 32 people pretending they couldn't hear. Emmerich Wolfstead looked at her for a long time. The managed mode, the pleasant, warm, slightly amused composure he wore like the expensive coats, went away. Not all at once, in layers, like watching someone take off armor they'd been wearing so long they'd forgotten it was armor. Cade was silent. For the first time since the night on the sidewalk outside Grady's, Cade was completely, perfectly silent, as though even the wolf understood that what happened in the next 10 seconds could not be helped by certainty or reinterpretation or the sincere belief that booking procedure was a form of courtship. If I tell you, Emmerich said, and his voice was different. Stripped, careful, the real one underneath the managed one, exposed like a wire without its casing. You will either believe me or you won't. If you don't, nothing changes. You file your report and I handle the consequences. If you do believe me, he stopped. If you do believe me, then you'll understand why that report can't be filed. And I am not asking you not to file it. I am asking you to hear me before you decide. I'm listening. He held her gaze. His eyes were brown. And then, slowly, deliberately, without blinking, he let them change. Gold. Not a trick of the light. Not a reflection. Gold from the inside out, the iris reshaping itself around a pupil that contracted to a vertical slit, fixed, predatory. The eyes of something that had been watching her from behind his face since the first moment she'd walked up to him on that sidewalk outside Grady's, with her hand on her radio and her shoulders squared. He was very still. The kind of still she now understood was not composure, but control. The control of something powerful enough that stillness was a choice it made for other people's benefit. I'm the Alpha King of the Northeastern Territories, he said. I lead 7 packs. I've held this title for 11 years. I can shift into a wolf form. I can hear your heartbeat from inside that house. And the reason my fingerprints aren't in your database is because they change with every shift. The prints you took are already gone. The next time you print me, they'll be different. He paused, let that land. Those men on 9th and Harper were from 2 packs disputing a boundary line. I was mediating. The people in that house are my pack, one of 7, the one based in this city. They are teachers and electricians and nurses and someone's grandmother who makes very good soup. And if your report draws attention to the pattern you found, people will come asking questions that my people are not built to survive. She could feel her own heartbeat, steady, trained steady, the way the academy had taught her. Regulate the breath, regulate the pulse. Meet the situation with your body under control, even when your mind is not. And the first night, she said, the arrest? Something changed in his face. The political briefing fell away. What replaced it was not composed or precise or king-shaped at all. On the night you arrested me, he said, something in me that is not separate from me, not a voice, not a passenger, just the part of me that runs deeper than language, recognized you. Not as a possession, as a person. He was quiet for a moment. 11 years. 11 years of being the title before the person. Everyone I've ever known has known what I am before they knew who I am. Every conversation is a negotiation. You called me sir and asked for my license. You had no idea. And it was the most honest thing that's happened to me in a decade. Inside the house, 32 people were holding their breath. You're telling me you're a werewolf, she said. I'm telling you I'm a wolf. And everyone in that house? Most of them. The children. Some, not all. She looked through the window, at the teenage girl reading, at the woman braiding hair, at the child who had been shrieking with laughter 10 minutes ago and was now asleep on someone's lap. And I'm your, what? Your mate? Yes. Because I handcuffed you. The ghost of a smile. The handcuffs weren't the cause. They were, my wolf interpreted them as a formal declaration. A formal declaration. He was very moved. She stared at him, at his gold eyes and his careful hands, and the house full of people behind him. His people, his pack, his responsibility. And the most dangerous truth she'd ever been told sitting between them on a cold porch in November. I need to go, she said. She turned. His voice stopped her. Estella. She looked back. He reached into his pocket, took out a card, and wrote on the back. Careful block letters, not rushed, not heavy-handed. The handwriting said, I knew this moment was coming, and I will not beg. The Marlowe on 5th, room 614. His voice was quiet. I'm not at the pack house tonight. I didn't want you to have to come here to find me if you decide to find me. Not his territory, a hotel, a neutral space, a choice made for her benefit, not his. She took the card. She put it in her jacket pocket. She walked down the porch steps and didn't look back. She didn't look back because she was afraid that if she saw his face, stripped bare, no composure left, no managed warmth, nothing between her and the man who'd just trusted her with the most dangerous truth he owned. She wouldn't leave. And she needed to leave. She needed to go somewhere where the walls didn't have ears and the air didn't smell like pine resin, and the man on the porch hadn't just told her that her case file was a threat to 32 people, including a grandmother who made good soup. Emmerich went to the Marlowe. Room 614 was a standard room, a bed, a desk, a window overlooking the city. He sat on the edge of the bed. He didn't take off his coat. She left, Cade said. The wolf's voice was small, not smitten, not certain, not earnest or happy or busy reinterpreting arrest procedure as a love language. Small, in a way that Cade had never been small, not through the first arrest, not through the second arrest, not through the interview where she'd asked 12 questions and he'd counted them like heartbeats. She left, Cade said again, and then, barely, did we do it wrong? Emmerich pressed his hands against his face. He could still smell her. Rain on warm stone, coffee, the particular sharp, clean scent that was just her, already fading from the porch air that clung to his coat. His throat ached, not from speaking, from the specific bodily weight of having shown someone the truest thing about yourself and watching them leave with it. Not because she was cruel, because the truth was too large for the porch and she needed space, and he had given it to her, and giving it to her was the right thing to do, and the right thing was an animal with teeth, and it was eating him alive. Cade curled up in a place behind Emmerich's ribs and went silent. The silence was the worst thing Emmerich Wolfstead had ever heard. Chapter 4. The Choice. Estella went home. She sat at her kitchen table and she did what she always did when the world stopped making sense. She opened her case file. Case number 2847-M. Wolfstead, Emmerich. Anomalous records. She read through everything she'd gathered, the fingerprint anomaly, the property perimeter, the men who didn't talk, the interview where he'd answered 12 questions and told her nothing and everything. The way a room full of people orbited a man without deciding to. Then she turned to a blank page and made a different kind of list. Things Emmerich Wolfstead did that no human can do. 1. Eyes changed color. Gold, vertical pupil. 2. Fingerprints that change with every shift. 3 scans, 3 failures, because there's nothing to match against. 3. 5 men on a sidewalk stopped moving when he was between them. No contact, no weapon, they just stopped. 4. Heard me pull up from inside a house with closed windows. 5. Radiated heat like a furnace through his skin on a cold night. No coat, not cold. 6. Everyone in a room of 32 people oriented around him without deciding to. Not deference, gravity. Things Emmerich Wolfstead did not do. 1. Lie. In 2 arrests, 1 interview, and 1 conversation on a porch, not 1 lie. 2. Resist arrest, either time. He could have. 3. Use whatever he is to get out of being booked. 4. Follow me. Anywhere. Ever. 5. Ask me not to investigate. 6. Ask me not to file my report. 7. Tell me what to do with the truth. He gave it to me and let me leave with it. She looked at the second list for a long time. He had been arrested twice by a rookie human cop who had no idea what she was dealing with. He could have walked away at any point, both times. He could have compelled her, scared her, simply been gone before she reached for the cuffs. He had done none of those things. He had put his hands behind his back and said, "Of course," and gone quietly, because she had asked him to, and he had not once, in 25 days, used what he was to override what she chose. And when her case file had gotten close enough to threaten his people, 32 of them, teachers and electricians and someone's grandmother, he hadn't asked her to stop. He'd told her the truth and let her decide. She put the case file down. She stood at her kitchen window and looked at the city, her city, the city she'd sworn to protect, the city that was apparently full of wolves. And she thought about 32 people in a warm house on a Saturday night, about a teenage girl reading in the corner, about a child asleep on someone's lap, about a man who had said, "My people are not built to survive," and meant every word. She was a cop. She had sworn to protect people. All people. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out the card. The Marlowe on 5th, room 614. Estella put on her coat. The Marlowe was a mid-range hotel on the edge of the financial district. Clean, anonymous, the kind of place a king would stay when he didn't want to be a king for a while. She took the elevator to the 6th floor. She walked down the hallway. She stopped outside 614. She knocked. 12 seconds, she counted. Then footsteps, and the door opened. Emmerich Wolfstead stood in the doorway wearing a gray t-shirt and no coat, and no composure, and no managed warmth, and nothing except the face underneath everything, the real one, exhausted and open, and afraid in a way that a man who led 7 packs was not supposed to be afraid. "Estella," he said, "can I come in?" He stepped back. She stepped in. The room was small, a bed, a desk, a window, a chair. His coat over the chair. A glass of water untouched on the bedside table. 14 properties across the city, and he was sleeping here, in a standard hotel room, so she could find him somewhere that wasn't his territory. The door closed. 4 feet between them and nowhere to go that wasn't closer. "I went through the case file," she said. "All of it. The prints, the properties, the interviews, the pattern." She met his eyes. "And then I made a different list. 2 columns. What you can do, what you didn't do." He didn't say anything. He stood there in his gray t-shirt and looked at her, holding his breath without knowing it, every line of him braced for whatever she was about to say. "The second column is longer," she said, "and it's the one that matters." He still didn't speak. His hands were at his sides, and they were, very slightly, trembling. The most powerful alpha alive, and his hands were shaking because a woman was standing in his hotel room telling him she'd read his file. "I don't understand what you are," she said. "I don't understand your world or your packs or what it means that something in you decided I was yours the night I arrested you over an apple. But I understand what you did with that information. You were honest. You were patient. You let me investigate you for 3 weeks without interfering. And when my investigation threatened your people, you didn't ask me to stop. You told me the truth and let me choose." She took a breath. "I'm choosing." "Emmerich," Cade whispered. The wolf was awake. Fragile with hope in a way that Cade, who had been serenely certain of everything since the moment the handcuffs clicked, had never been fragile about anything. "Emmerich, she's here. She came. She's here. Don't, please, just be still." She closed the 4 feet to 2. She reached up and put her hand on his jaw. His breath stopped. The man who could hear a heartbeat through walls stopped breathing because her hand was on his face. She could feel the warmth of him against her palm, that impossible heat, and the muscle in his jaw flex once under her fingers and go still. His eyes were brown. He was holding the wolf back, giving her the human first. Letting her choose the human. "You can breathe," she said. "Working on it." She kissed him. Not careful, not tentative. Deliberate, the way she did everything. She made a decision, and she walked toward it, and she did not stop. His hands came up slowly and settled on her waist. Light. Careful. The hands of a man who could crush stone, touching her like she was made of something irreplaceable. She kissed him harder. His control broke, not violently, more like a held breath finally released. His arms came around her fully, pulling her against his chest. And he kissed her back with the devastating focus of a man who had been thinking about this for 25 days and had convinced himself it was never going to happen. "Oh," Cade said. For 1 full second, the wolf was struck genuinely, completely silent. Then, "Emmerich. She is, her mouth, our mouth. Is this legal? Is there a code for this?" Municipal Statute 11.4, in the event of being kissed by the arresting officer, the defendant shall. I have lost the ability to finish sentences. This has never happened. I didn't know this could happen. I need to lie down. I need to lie down and also never stop standing. Both, simultaneously. Emmerich's chest shook against hers. Laughing. The alpha king of 7 packs, kissing her in a hotel room, laughing because his wolf was having a legislative crisis. She pulled back an inch. "What?" "Nothing." His voice was rough, lower. His eyes were flickering at the edges, brown to gold to brown, like a candle in a draft. "Your eyes are doing the thing. I'm aware. Can you stop it? At this exact moment?" He looked at her from an inch away, his arms around her, her hands on his chest, his heart hammering through his t-shirt. "No." She looked at the gold spreading in his eyes. Not threatening, just present, the wolf. Unable to bear being further from her than Emmerich was. "Okay," she said. "I can work with gold." Something in his face cracked open, and what came through was grateful and wrecked and young in a way that a 34-year-old alpha king was not supposed to be young. And he pressed his forehead against hers and breathed. "She said she can work with gold," Cade reported, vibrating. "She means us. She's working with us. We are being worked with. This is the greatest day in the history of days." They ended up on the hotel couch. It was a small couch, standard issue, not designed for a 6'3" alpha king and the woman who had arrested him twice, and they fit on it the way 2 people fit when one of them doesn't care about ergonomics and the other is willing to rearrange the laws of furniture to keep her close. Estella was tucked against his side, her head on his chest, her legs curled under her. His arm was around her shoulders. His other hand was on her knee, warm and still, like he put it there and couldn't move it because moving it would mean she might notice, and noticing might mean she'd shift, and if she shifted he would simply cease to exist. "She is on us," Cade said, with the quiet reverence of a wolf witnessing a sunrise. "She is using us as furniture. She is comfortable enough to use us as a structural surface. This is a den. This couch is a den, we live here now. Terms," she said, against his chest. "Terms. Non-negotiables. If this is happening,
This is happening. Then these are true. She didn't sit up. She stayed where she was, ear against his heartbeat, hand flat on his sternum, listing the conditions from inside the arms of the man she was surrendering to. 1. No lying. Ever. If I ask, you answer. Not the managed version. Not the 12 questions and nothing version. The real answer. Yes. 2. I keep my badge. You don't interfere with my work. You don't send Cal to shadow me. You don't fix my cases. I'm a cop and I stay a cop. It's the most real thing about you. 3. Tuesday dinners with my parents. You come. You eat my mother's pot roast, and you do not let your eyes do the thing at the dinner table. She felt the laugh building in his chest. The pot roast may present challenges. 4.
If I say stop, you stop, immediately. No wounded alpha pride. Immediately. 5. I get to keep asking questions. About your world, your packs, your wolf, even the stupid ones. There won't be stupid ones. There will be incredibly stupid ones. I have a list. Of course you do. His thumb traced a line along her shoulder. His chin settled on top of her head. Is the list categorized? Alphabetized. She has an alphabetized list, Cade said, vibrating between joy and religious experience. She has made a system for keeping us. This is governance. This is structure. This is the most beautiful thing I have ever heard, and I once heard 7 packs howl in unison at the winter solstice, and this is better. 6. Her voice was quieter now, the cop precision softening. You let me be scared. I'm going to be scared. About what you are, about whether I'm enough for someone like you. And you don't fix it. You let me be scared, and you stay. His arm tightened around her, not a squeeze, a hold. Estella, his voice was low, the real one. I have been the Alpha King for 11 years. I have held a territory through succession challenges and a border war that lasted 9 months. And being on this couch, with your alphabetized questions and your non-negotiable Tuesday pot roast, is the most terrifying and important thing I have ever done. He pressed his mouth to the top of her head. I'm not going anywhere. She didn't say anything for a moment. His heartbeat under her ear, steady, warm, real. 7, she said. He waited. I'm closing the case file. His arm went still, not tense, still. The way he went still when something mattered too much for movement. Case 2847-M. Wolfstead, Emmerich, Anomalous Records. She kept her voice steady. Fingerprint anomaly, system error. No further investigation required. Case closed, no action. Estella, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. That's why it counts. She pressed her hand harder against his chest. She could feel his heart kick under her palm. I'm a cop, she said. I work from evidence. I have never filed a false report. I have never closed a case I knew was open. And I am going to walk into my precinct on Monday morning and close this one, because your people, your 32 people in that house, your grandmother who makes good soup, your teenage girl who reads in the corner, they deserve to be safe more than my case file deserves to be accurate. She lifted her head. She looked at him. His eyes were gold. He was not trying to stop it. That's my cost, she said. That's what I'm paying to be here. She is closing the file, Cade said, and his voice was different now, not ecstatic, not performing, just awed, the way a wolf is awed by something vast enough to stop it mid-stride. She is protecting them, our people. She is protecting our people, and she is not even one of us, and she is doing it because she chose to. Emmerich. She is not a wolf. She is something else. She is something I don't have a word for. She is keeping us and keeping them, and the cost is real, and she is paying it, and I. Cade stopped. I was wrong, he said, very quietly. The handcuffs were not the ceremony. This is. This is the ceremony. Right here. Right now. This. Emmerich looked down at her. At the woman who had arrested him twice and investigated him for 3 weeks, and walked into a house full of wolves without flinching, and was now lying on his chest offering to break her own rules to keep his people safe. Estella, he said, just her name. Nothing after it, just the word, held in his mouth like something he was learning how to carry. She put her head back on his chest. His arms tightened, they stayed. She fell asleep 20 minutes later, between terms 8 and 9, mid-sentence, her hand fisted in the fabric of his t-shirt. He didn't move. He sat in the dark, in the quiet, holding a woman who had the authority to arrest him, and the integrity to close a case she'd opened, and the courage to lie for the first time in her career, because the truth would hurt people who weren't hers yet, but would be. She is sleeping, Cade whispered. On us. She trusts us enough to sleep. We are safe territory. We are being inhabited. Emmerich looked at her, at the dark hair across her forehead, at the small fist in his shirt. His eyes were gold. He let them be. Don't move, Cade said. She is home. We are keeping her forever. Forever, Emmerich said, to the empty room. To the wolf who had been wrong about the handcuffs and the municipal code and the booking procedure, and right from the very first second, about her. 6 weeks later, Estella Marsh was at her desk at the precinct, finishing a report, when Tommy Dorsett leaned over and said, "Wolfstead's back." She looked up. Emmerich was at the front counter, holding 2 cups of coffee, wearing the navy coat, looking at her with the expression she now recognized as the one he wore when he'd been thinking about her for a while and had finally been rewarded by the sight of her. Every officer in the bullpen had unconsciously given him 3 extra feet of space. She walked to the counter. She took the coffee. She stood on her toes and kissed his jaw, quickly, casually, the way you kiss someone you've kissed 100 times, and said, "Mr. Wolfstead? Officer Marsh?" His hand found the small of her back. His thumb traced one small circle against her spine, so habitual that Tommy, watching from across the bullpen, thought, "So that's what it looks like." "I'm going to need you to come with me," she said. "Of course." "Here we go," Cade said, deeply, radiantly happy. "She is arresting us again. 3rd time. We are being reclaimed. The handcuffs are foundational to this relationship. They are our origin story. Future generations will speak of the handcuffs, and they will be wrong about what they mean, but they will be wrong in the right direction." Tommy watched them walk out together, her hand on his arm, his head bent toward hers, both smiling at a joke that apparently required no words. "What'd he do this time?" Tommy asked the sergeant. "Nothing. He brought coffee." "He keeps showing up?" "She arrested him, twice." The sergeant shrugged. "He never really left." Tommy looked at the door, at the man who had just walked through it without disturbing the air around him, and the woman who had put handcuffs on him and changed his entire life. "Huh," said Tommy. In the parking lot, Emmerich looked down at Estella, who was drinking his coffee and had not let go of his arm. "You know," he said, "I still have the right to remain silent." "And?" "I'd still rather not." She looked up at him. His eyes were brown, warm, flecked with gold at the edges, the way they always were now. The wolf close to the surface because Cade couldn't bear to miss anything. "Good," she said, "because you owe me 2 arrests and 12 questions worth of explanations, and I'm keeping a list." "Of course you are." "It's alphabetized. I would expect nothing less." She squeezed his arm. He covered her hand with his. They walked toward the diner on the corner, the one that served eggs and didn't know it was about to become the most important restaurant in the Northeastern Territories. And behind them, the precinct went back to normal, and the world went back to the quiet business of being a world that contained wolves and humans and the specific, unreasonable miracle of a woman who arrested the most powerful man alive twice, and a man who decided, in the time it took to be read his rights, that he'd rather be in handcuffs than anywhere else. Cade, earnest and smitten and certain from the very first moment. Wrong about the handcuffs, wrong about the municipal code, wrong about the booking procedure, right about her. Settled in behind Emmerich's ribs like a fire finding its hearth. Home, he said, and it was.